Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
First, a word from our sponsor. The Daily Compliance News for February 24, 2022, the Fate of the Trial edition. We begin with that story from Wall Street Journal, Risk and Compliance Journal, Dylan Tokar reporting that the Department of Justice's case against Roger Ng is in jeopardy now and been thrown out into doubt because prosecutors failed to turn over some 15,500 documents to Ng's lawyers for review in trial preparation. Even the prosecutors called this misstep a, quote, inexcusable error, end quote, and they supported adjourning the trial while the defense teams reviews the information. The documents come from warrants executed on former Goldman partner Timothy Leiser, the government's star witness. The judge allowed the government to conclude its direct examination of Leiser, but has suspended the trial to allow the defendants to prepare. If you're not a trial lawyer, let me just say in the trial lawyer world, this is very serious, and I would fully expect or would not be surprised at all if the judge grants a mistrial. Inexcusable conduct. Next up, from the New York Times, companies in the EU could be held liable for violations along their supply chain under a new proposed law by the EU relating to environmental violations or human rights abuses. So this is obviously a feature of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, but this would extend it to areas which are not currently covered by the FCPA. So could be actually a bulwark against these areas and something the U.S. might look at. Next up, from Michael Peregrine, writing in Forbes, the potential implications for corporate governance from the invasion of Ukraine. Obviously, anytime you go to war, there's going to be a disruption, but Michael takes it down to the level of the individual corporate board and says that corporate boards need to be fully engaged. I would say that one of the byproducts of the pandemic has been more board engagement and greater risk management. And certainly the Delaware Supreme Court's expansion of the Caremark doctrine has portended that as well. So my hope is that the disaster recovery to business resiliency to businesses now message has even moved up to the board, and we won't see that too much, or at least we'll see boards engaged. And finally, the reputational damage issue comes to us from a first-time contributor to the Daily Compliance News, Golf Week, who reports that Phil Nicholson has been fired as a spokesman for Kpmg after his rather intemperate remarks about the proposed Saudi Arabian golf tour, which would be in competition with the PGA. It's not clear whether his other sponsors are going to can him as well, but it shows the damage of cozying up to authoritarian regimes who are alleged to have or have engaged in human rights violations. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.